Well, I'm looking for that comet everybody's talking about, and it's so close to the sun, but maybe you'll see it if you stay star curious with me, Mark Marquette. So glad that you joined us today at the American Space Museum's video podcast, Stay Curious. And usually Mondays we do something called Stay Star Curious so that you can learn from what's in your backyard that is your eyes can see of this fabulous and very mystical and puzzling universe of ours here. So, hello to Marty Winkle. He's on the Streamlabs board today as we're kicking off another, well, the last day of the month, September 30th. We're into Rocktober already tomorrow. And the last quarter of this year 2024, almost a quarter of the way through the 21st century. All kinds of news that makes you want to look up. People are buzzing around me and asking me all the time about news they hear. Some of it is quite laughable, like a second moon of the Earth. This moon of the Earth is only about 100 yards wide, okay, 300 feet at the most. And you're not going to see it. You're not going to, no chance unless you have a 30-inch telescope in your backyard, are you going to see this second moon. And this happens a lot that the moon captures, that the Earth's gravity captures a nearby asteroid that's very small on the range of just a football field or less, or soccer pitch or baseball diamond. These aren't very big objects. Also, a buzz is an annular eclipse of the sun. It's going to happen October 2nd. You're not going to see that either. And I'm going to show you what that would look like over the Easter Islands in South Pacific. However, we've got a beautiful comet in the sky that is now starting to perform right before it's going to be too close to the sun for the next 2 weeks. And it sort of looks like this. We'll see some pictures of this comet that they're calling A3 Tsuchinshan. It's a Japanese astronomer who saw it first, his last name. But they're calling it A3 in the news media. And yes, if you go out tomorrow morning, and the next morning you might see it directly east, just about an hour before sunrise, right around 6 o'clock. This is not that comet. My friend Derek Demeter took this picture of Comet Neowise a couple years ago. That is the VAB over my shoulder here, Vehicle Assembly Building. Cool shot that my friend Derek, who's the astronomer up at not Eastern Florida State, he's up there at Seminole State University in Sanford. But so beautiful way to say, hey, you might see this through a photograph. This comet is not very visible with the naked eye yet, but it will be. We're hoping that this lives up to the comet of the year for sure. But that's going to you're going to wait till the second week of September to really see it good in the evening sky. And then with the moon is 28 days old if you talk like an astronomer. And Marty said he is starting to talk like an astronomer. He's getting the moon days down and realizes that that's right before new moon. And that's why we have an eclipse day after tomorrow over the South Pacific is a new moon. The moon's passing in front of the sun, but it's not going to completely cover the sun. It's an annular eclipse, and I'll show you what that looks like. We want to thank our friends at Go History Travel, the Ramanujans. They're traveling over in Sweden right now. Financial supporters of the American Space Museum, you go and check out their gohistorytravel.org or their Facebook page, and you'll see Bharat running around with his mom Mal and father Rama as they give you space history in a way. They give you history of the Earth and the world and everybody associated with it in a very unique way, and visit lots of spacey sites. So thank you, Ramanujans, for your generous financial support of the American Space Museum. How many days old is the moon? It's about 28 days old in its 29 and a half day cycle, 29 and a half being new moon. Then there you see when it's going to be crescent phase starting later in the week and be a beautiful crescent come Friday, Saturday weekend time. So There's how you talk like an astronomer. 28-day-old moon. It's a thin crescent in the morning sky, right next to close to the sun. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Milky Way. Hope that you can see it and that you're not suffering noctalgia. Yes, that is a thing astronomers are talking about, meaning sky grief. They're grieving that if you've lived 20 years in the same backyard, you know that you can't go out in that backyard and see all of the stars you used to 20 years ago unless you're in some really rural area. And this is the Milky Way that you would never see in a big city. And then as you go out from the suburbs, out to dark sky sites, and finally a natural park, you see more and more of it. And the sky grief that we're witnessing, called noctalgia, is not only affecting humans, but it's also affecting the animal world, where animals that depend on stars for their migration and their flying and their other things that we don't even understand about the animal world, how they're tied into the night sky and the moon cycles and so forth. They are changing their habitats and the ways they live because of this constant light is being illuminating our earth here, from the shopping centers, the car lots, the you name it, strip malls, your backyard. Every street has just got way too many and the incorrect, usually, type of light. That there is a way to light the night, but an effective way, and the International Dark Sky Association are the leaders of that. Well, here's a little chart that shows you how the Earth captures a mini moon. That is a mini moon from 3 years ago that we captured briefly. It came in above my head on the yellow and comes in close to the Earth's orbit. The Earth catches it. Of course, we're moving around the sun. That's why you got this looking haphazard spirogyra type of thing going on, to show you that as the Earth's moving and is captured, the Earth's gravity eventually ejects the object, mini moon trajectory going away from us, as the momentum spinning around the Earth a week or so, sometimes up to a month, gets them with enough velocity that they go off and go somewhere else in our solar system. Now, had one of these moons hit the Earth, and sometimes they will, like we know the dinosaurs 65 million years ago were partially eradicated because of an impact of a asteroid no more than probably 2 miles across in the Gulf of Mexico is where we think that happened. So it's just a lot of hype and a lot of weathermen talking about stuff they don't know about when they talk about we're capturing a mini moon. Go out in your backyard and look at it. No, you won't see it with binoculars. You will not see it with a 30-inch telescope. All right. But those that have the 30-inch telescopes on top of the mountains, the universities and other institutions, take radar images of these things. That's how we know a lot of them are there. There's over 3,000 near-Earth asteroids right now that are within, say, 10 diameters of the moon away from us that could hit the Earth someday. So, well, I mentioned that you're going to be hearing about an eclipse of the sun going on this week, too. And this is the annular eclipse of the sun a year ago. All right. And the April 8th total eclipse of the sun that a lot of us saw across America, including myself. The moon is very far away. It's a non-supermoon, so it does not cover up the sun completely. And therefore, it's called annular, with this annular ring around it. That's what's going to happen. Very few dry land areas. Easter Island's one of them. And the whole eclipse occurs over the South Pacific. So you'll have to be on a boat to see it. And there's a lot of people that pay good money, and they will be in the path of this. Well, here's a woodcut. Marty said, what's this? Well, this is a woodcut from the 1670s of Halley's Comet going by. And Halley's Comet was very spectacular in most of its close approaches to Earth every 76 years, except in 1986. That was one of the worst approaches of it, and the last time we saw it. Halley's Comet's coming around in 2062, Marty. 2062. We've just got 40 years to make it to see that. All right. Neither one of us are going to see it again, but it'll be quite spectacular because it's going to be close to Earth this time. And I've got a short chart here to show you what we're talking about. Uh, uh, in the orbit of the sun going around, of the Earth going around the sun, in comets coming in from different angles, the comet could be on the completely opposite side of the solar system from where we're located. And that's what happened with Halley's Comet last time it came by in 1986. And it is a periodic comet that goes out past Pluto, does a U-turn, and then comes back. About every 76 years, an astronomer named Halley predicted it, but he didn't see it. And an interesting side note is the great writer Mark Twain, Sam Clemens, was born and died on the Halley's Comet. He died in 1910, and so 76 years before that's when he was born. Comets, by the way, thought of as omens. They didn't know what they were. Like meteors, people thought these were part of the Earth's atmosphere, not part of the solar system. This was a big change in the 1800s when astronomers realized comets they're like planets. They're orbiting the sun, but they're in very elliptical orbits, and they come from up above and below the plane that the planets and other solar system debris is orbiting in. So they didn't know what they were. Comet means hairy tail, basically, in Latin. They had a hairy tail to them. They also noticed that when it was in the one side of the sky, the comet's tail was behind it. But when it got on the other side of the sky, the comet's tail was ahead of it. That should have tipped them off that this was debris being ripped off the comet by the heat and solar energy of the sun. Well, here is a picture of this comet we'll call A3. Its last name is Tsuchinshan, Tsuchinshan. That's an astronomer's name, and ATLAS is a group of telescopes that also found this. But this is an amateur astronomer in Chile took this picture yesterday morning. Quite spectacular. He even put himself in the frame there. Now we're going to see a couple things. See that peachy line there? Okay. And the line above it, and then you go into the sky. That peach-colored line has a name. And I'm going to tell you what the name of that is here, so stay curious. The chart on the right you can understand very easily. These are the planets Mercury, Venus, and Earth. And this is the comet coming in from the bottom, and then it's going around the sun and coming back on the other side of the sun. Right now, it's right here. The next week, it's going to be too close to the sun. It's going to be between the Earth and the sun, and then about October 7th is when we'll see it in the evening sky. Now, the chart on the left shows you the blue line is the comet coming in, okay, at the angle it's coming in. So where all of the planets and asteroids are like on a single plane, like this sheet of paper, okay, they all orbit sort of in the same plane. Some aren't above and below this. Pluto is. That's why it's so weird. But all the comets are coming from above and below, as this is showing you here. And this particular comet is coming from what we call the Oort cloud, which is maybe 5 to 20 billion miles away. That's 10 times further than Pluto, which is about 4 billion miles away. This Oort cloud is a sphere of cold comet debris that was leftovers from when the solar system was made. And the energy of the sun heating out pushes the cold all the way out. So this is a reservoir of comets that were Fred Whipple, a famous astronomer of the 50s, called comets dirty snowballs. And that's what they are. They're very porous, a lot of air in them, but they have rocky areas. They have ammonia. They have trace elements of minerals and so forth. Comets are made of various things, and you're going to see in a minute where pictures of me making a comet. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a comet for you in October when this comet is just brilliant in the sky. Comets are very fickle, like cats, like felines. They're called the felines of the solar system because they're so unpredictable. Here at the very bottom, see those numbers, C 2023, that's when it was discovered, A3. This is it last night and the night before. It's just barely above the horizon. And then when the sun gets up, the brightness of the sun's rays and twilight wash out the comet. But people taking pictures like these, they know what they're doing. There's multiple images involved there that they stack on top of each other. So, but it's very hard to see by the eye, but you can see it with binoculars. I might get up in the morning and go out to the boat dock and try to see if I can see it in the east over there in Port St. John. There is Comet Neowise that was 3 years ago. This is a very Derek Demeter also took this picture. Credit him. This A3 we're calling it will look probably at least like this, maybe even brighter. It's predicted that when it goes on the other side of the sun and comes out into the evening and away from the glare of the sun, it is going to be really about 3 times brighter than it is right now. So that is Comet Neowise, the dirty snowball. I think I got this Milky Way out of sequence there. Yeah, let's just forget about that for a second. We're going to look at the Milky Way, see where the sun is in the Milky Way. We're at the edge of one of the spiral arms. And so we're looking towards the center of the Milky Way right now. That's why we see this arm in front of us. There's Derek's picture. There's a comet Hale-Bopp that I took a picture of in 1987. A spectacular comet. And comet tails have 2 parts. Now, this comet was only about 5 miles in diameter. We know this Comet A3 I'm talking about is only about 2 miles in diameter. They do radar studies on this. But you see 2 tails there, Marty. You see the white debris tail where actual rock and gas, ice and stuff is coming off of the comet because it's being heated up by the sun in a environment that's 300 below zero. And then you see the blue tail off of it. That is the gas. Gas coming off of a comet takes a completely different tail, and we don't understand how that works very well. Here we talked about Halley's Comet, and this is an artist composition of what Halley's Comet actually looked like, mostly from the European Giotto spacecraft that flew by it in 1986. Comets are enveloped in a coma, all right? Hair for Latin, coma, is encircling it as the surface goes from being 300 below zero. If it goes from 300 below zero to 200 below zero, stuff's going to start outgassing. But when it gets close to the sun, you know, it's could be 100 degrees above zero, and then 300 or 400 degrees above zero as they pass close to the sun. So that's why this long tail of debris is spitting and sputtering and just so unpredictable. Yeah, Marty, you got a question there.
Yeah, I got a question. Is the comet, let's say Halley's Comet, is it eventually just going to deteriorate? Because you say we're losing rock, we're losing gases.
That's an excellent question, Marty. Because it's made of rock and gases like a gravel snowbank, all right? And Dave Stange knows what I'm talking about. When the gravel of the road's thrown into a snowbank on the side, then it freezes and all that. Boy, those make for some neat, mean snowballs when you're in a snowball fight, getting a little gravel in that snowball. That's what it is. Depending, we don't think they have a rocky core. So yes, they will eventually just evaporate or have so little volatile material in them that when they get close to the sun, maybe all that rockiness just collapses on itself. But Yes, they can probably just disintegrate and evaporate. And I'm going to show you, well, this next picture of one's a good example, Marty. This was a spectacular mission where the European Space Agency flew a spacecraft called Rosetta around this comet. This is a comet called, it's got two names and I forget the name. I'm not going to try, Geo something. Anyway, it looks like an odd shape because of the light hitting it. This again is only about 3 miles across. Obviously, looks like two icy comets that nudged each other and stuck together. This is parts of this comet coming off when it was closer to the sun as it got further away, and they had to make sure the spacecraft wasn't hit by this debris spewing off of it. And then they actually landed a little drone type of spacecraft on there that didn't stick very well because there wasn't very much mass. So there's no mass, there's no gravity. Gravity on there, if I jumped off of this, I would never come down. The gravity on it's so weak. Marty's seen all kinds of creatures like a lion head on the left-hand side standing on his fours. Maybe on the right you see a squirrel there, Carlton Bailey on the right, with that part on the left is the bushy tail. I could see it. That's being imaginative, but this is a saddleback that they even saw snow kind of coming off of it. All right, as the reaction of it getting heated up and melted, so to speak. But yes, that will probably completely evaporate and melt away if it doesn't get caught up by the gravity of one of the planets and sucked into its atmospheres. This comet is going to be, there's the October 17th to 22nd. We're thinking right around October 15th. It's really going to be peaking, but this is in Virgo, and this is right after sunset, okay? Those Bautes, Arcturus is a bright star we've talked about, all right? There's Sagittarius and Scorpio on the left, part of the Milky Way that's setting. So you will see it in the western horizon. Mid-October, probably around the 10th. How would you become famous? Back in the day, you would discover a comet, and it would be named after you, and you'd be immortalized. This is Leslie Peltier, a Delphos, Ohio native, Northwest Ohio, near Lima, near my hometown of Findlay, Ohio. This gentleman made a hobby out of discovering over 20 comets, and then he also studied what we call variable stars. Most of the stars in the sky vary in brightness, including our sun varies in brightness, hence heat output, but nobody's talking about that with the global warming, but that has something to do with global warming. The sun is hotter right now, not by like 1 degree, but just a fraction of 1/100th of a degree could be enough to really affect humanity. And that's what goes on all the time with our sun. And Leslie Peltier was renowned for categorizing more than 132,000 variable star observations in his 60-year career. I met this man in like 1968. My grandmother actually knew his wife and took me there. Drove me there, and I remember meeting him, and he didn't seem very mentoring, but I did see his observatory. People weren't very mentoring back then like they are today, I think. He wrote a seminal book called Starlit Nights. He was called the world's greatest non-professional astronomer by one of the great astronomers of all time, Harlow Shapley. And this is his book, Starlit Nights, that influenced me. It's sort of like an inspirational, go out in the backyard and you'll not only be turned on to the cool things about these stars that are like our sun and millions and millions and millions of miles away, but you'll feel a spiritual sort of connection with the stars. And is that other spiritual beings connecting with us? So it's not a theological book at all. It's just trying to connect you with the nightlife there. This is another book of Leslie Peltier's called Guidepost to the Stars. I checked out or I bought from a library giveaway bookshelf. These are the type of books you're looking for if you're interested in amateur astronomy. Is books that got charts in them that explain a little bit about what the charts are all about. There's talking about Cephas and Cassiopeia, two great star patterns, husband and wife, the only husband and wife pair, king and queen in the sky. They're part of the Andromeda Perseus myth there. So these are Leslie Peltier. Good to talk about him from my hometown region of Ohio. Lived to be 80 years old. Discovered, though, 10 comets that bear his name. And so he's immortalized. And other astronomers would want to be known back, like Charles Messier became famous discovering comets. And that gets some notice from the king and queen that need a court astronomer to make astrological predictions, which they begrudgingly did, knowing that astrology probably had nothing to do with the horoscopes of man. So, but Leslie Peltier there and his wonderful books, seek them out there. Well, something I've done for probably 50 years to demonstrate that comets are made of materials that have all the elements of life is I make a comet out of dry ice. And here I am recently at a school function. Actually, it was a library function with our new STEAM educators that we're going to kick off our STEAM program Saturday here in the building. And we're excited all about that, to have about 30 kids in here learn some STEAM education from Natalia. Natalia is a Spanish teacher that does bilingual education. So anyway, I met her making this comet. There's the end product of dry ice. You see the green on it representing minerals, and it's steaming off there as I blow on it. Dry ice, by the way, is just your carbon dioxide you're exhaling right now, frozen at 110 degrees. 110 degrees, it drop out of we get all kinds of carbon dioxide together. That's what dry ice is. So I'm going to do this on the Stay Curious program when this comet is dazzling our eyes in the evening sky, and we hope it does. But it could split apart. It could just fizzle. We don't know, Marty. Sometimes comets might have a tar type of system on them that covers up all this volatile material so it doesn't go away. Anything can happen, but astronomers are pretty sure that you're going to see a pretty cool looking comet here in about a week and a half. Yes, Marty.
Hey, Jesse's talking about, I made a comet with my dad in my classes every year in elementary school and middle school.
Oh, okay. Hi, Jesse. I'm not looking to see who's calling there. My daughter, Jessie, and McKinley. That means McKinley's watching. My almost 3-year-old granddaughter and little 1-year-old Macy. So I know you got your hands full. My daughter, thanks for watching me. And she's up there in Bristol, Tennessee, Marty. And I know your son's up in Weaverville. And the devastation is just unbelievable to our friends up there. We haven't talked about that, Marty. We will off air, but I know I've been to Weaverville many times. AB Emblems is centered there. I hope they're okay. But this is the flooding is, I mean, once every 200 years, this type of flooding. And all these little cities in Southwest Virginia, like Damascus, and my friends in Poor Valley and Rich Valley and Gate City and all these other beautiful places, they can't even get to where they need to go because the roads are not there anymore. Little roads beside those creeks and so forth are just gone. And I saw pictures of people getting around on horses. Is probably the best way to get around right now. So think in your prayers for the people of Southwest Virginia, Upper East Tennessee, and the Carolina region around Asheville, because their lives are completely changed now with the Hurricane Helene flooding there. So Jessie, thank you for being there, my daughter. And yes, she does remember a few things that Daddy did in science, and Every science teacher, every teacher I knew would call me up, Marty, and say, the science teacher at elementary school has heard about you and wants you to come do your astronomy program. And I would tell those teachers when I called them up, I want 2 hours with your kids. And they said, oh, no, Mr. Marquette, we can only give an hour. And I said, then I'm not coming. They go, what? And I go, I'm not coming. Well, kids will never sit still for 2 hours. I go, yes, they will. And I want 2 hours. At the end of that 2 hours, when they're running over to me to hand me a gift card to the grocery store or something, they're saying, we have never heard our kids stay quiet for 2 hours like that. And I go, it's because it's a space and astronomy, and everybody has some innate curiosity about it. So go ahead on that UCX family microphone, Marty.
Dan Babcock's asking, Mark, any new info in regards to T Core 4?
Oh, great. Thank you, Dean. Dean's asking about the Corona Borealis star that we're expecting to brighten up in a periodic. And no, it hasn't happened yet. And if it doesn't happen in the next 2 months or next month, Corona Borealis is going to be the crown. Is going to be too near the sun to see it. So thank you, Dean. I should have updated that. I'll try to remember to do that next Monday. But we've talked about a star that's right near Arcturus. You can find Arcturus by finding the handle of the Big Dipper. And the Big Dipper is now scraping the bottom of the northern horizon. It's now a plow. And that's what they call it up in the UK. The United Kingdom, Robert Law knows it as the plow, not a dipper. It's just plowing up the ground right now. So thanks, Dean, for talking about the star in Corona Borealis. It has not brightened up yet, and it was predicted to by now, and hence these astronomical predictions are hard to make. And to end the comet jargon here, there is Don Thomas telling Carlton Bailey, keep your eyes to the stars, on a photo that Carlton took of a shuttle on the pad with Comet Hale-Bopp there in the background there. And my daughter was, I'm thinking she was born on Hale-Bopp year in there. So you're within a year or two of Hale-Bopp in 86 there. So, all right, so we're going to be hearing about this comet. That's a cool picture, Carlton. That's Don Thomas, the astronaut, signed that to Marty, and he was on his one of the flights. So he signed it to Carlton, not Marty, I mean. All right, there's Bautes, talked about that Corona Borealis, just up the upper top up there. That's where we're looking for the star to appear. And you go out right after sunset. It's about 7 o'clock, about 7:10, about 7:30, 7:50. You're going to see the bright star Venus on the horizon right there. And Venus is super bright. Saw it last night in the clouds. And it's going to keep getting higher and higher and higher and higher until Christmas time. It's going to take about 2 hours to set instead of about 20 minutes or 30 minutes now. And it will be so bright it can cast a shadow if you're in a dark spot up there. In a telescope, Venus will look like this, actually a little more of a crescent phase maybe, but it goes through phases like our sun. It is completely covered in clouds. We cannot see the surface of Venus. That's why it's so bright. But with certain types of spacecraft that have orbited Venus, like Magellan here, and this is Da Vinci, a European on the left, has done passes of Venus's cloud tops and imaged through the cloud tops. This is radar images here. This is infrared images on the left. The clouds are very thick, 30 miles thick, Marty. Our clouds aren't never more than a mile thick. And the atmosphere itself on Earth is about 30 miles thick. So very thick, runaway greenhouse, 900 degrees on the surface. By the way, those streaks on Venus on the left-hand side, in that black and white of the infrared image, those streaks are cosmic rays that are hitting the CCD chip in there. Well, talking about Venus, I told you to look at that pink line in the other picture we were showing there, the pink atmosphere. This pinkness here is called the belt of Venus. But it doesn't have anything to do with the planet Venus. It has to do with the god Venus, all right? Venus, the goddess, is wore a belt or a brassiere, they called it, around her. And this encompasses the solar system, not the solar system, the horizon. So it's the belt of Venus in this MarQ photograph of the rollout of Artemis a couple years ago there. And here's another belt of Venus, the peachy layer. And that dark layer right below it, that is the actual shadow of the Earth being cast against the sky, against the daytime sky. You don't see the shadow of the Earth cast in space, all right, because it's against the darkness of space. You see stars through it, just like you see the pavement through your shadow that's cast on a sidewalk. But this is the actual Earth shadow appearing, coming up at the horizon, the belt of Venus, and then the twilight colors. And Saturn is the other planet that you can easily see in the sky. You look at Venus in the west, you turn around, do a 180. When it gets darker there, we got somebody knocking at the door there. I thought somebody was. Marty's. So, these are pictures of Venus here. These are pictures of Jupiter. We've got one of our volunteers there wanting to know what's going on here, right? So, from the Earth's point of view, and going around once a year, and then Saturn taking 30 years to make one orbit around the sun. It's about 1 billion miles from the sun. It is tilted. The axis of it is tilted, and these rings go up and down over a period of time. My friend Johnny Horn compiled this. The rings looked like this in the middle pretty much last year. Last night, Marty, I looked at Saturn through a telescope, and it looked like the top picture there. So imagine the rings going a plane like this, and then all of a sudden they go from wide open to closed. And yes, they're almost going to be invisible. Now, they're not going to disappear. They're still there, of course, but from the perspective of Earth, they'll look like they will disappear. By the way, when you're looking at the rings, you're looking from one side to the other is about the distance to Earth's moon. They're about 250,000 miles across, all right? But they are so thin, at no point are the rings more than 1/2 mile. In fact, they're mostly 1/4 mile. All right, 1,250 feet, 1,500 feet, something like that, is the thickness of these rings. I kid you not. You would think they'd be at least a couple miles thick. No. 250,000 miles wide by 1/4 mile thick. That is the thickness of this sheet of paper, 20 miles wide. That is what we're talking about here. Isn't that cool? 20 miles wide, the thickness of the paper is what and so they're wobbly. The gravity and so forth wobbles them around. There's shepherd moons that are inside the rings and outside the rings that move things around. Here is what the rings looked like the other night through a telescope with an infrared imaging on it there. So you can see that they're closing up. This is a pretty substantial, good, big telescope. It looks like it's just a 12-inch, which backyard telescopes can get pictures like this. Here's the rings from the Cassini spacecraft that spent 12 years orbiting Saturn. Spectacular. All these grooves like a phonographic record. You got gaps in them. And some of these gaps are moons that are like 5 miles wide that are clearing out this area. You've got ice and rock. This is mostly rock, the dark ones, ice, the bright ones. And then this spectacular picture up above, you see the shadow being cast by pieces of the ring pulled out by a moon, one of these shepherding moons as it crosses it. And those are about maybe 200-300 feet high being cast onto the shadow rings there below. The rings are just, destroyed material. We're not sure if it was a moon that came too close, material that did not form, but the rings of Saturn are truly one of the wonders of our solar system. And we theorize that even Earth may have had a ring at one time. We know that the outer planets of Uranus, Neptune, as well as Jupiter have rings in various forms, but nothing like the spectacular rings of Saturn. Well, I know the Milky Way, you think summertime, but it's really more spectacular in the months of October when the skies are clearer. The weather patterns seem to clear out the cloud layers, and you get some of the clearest nights of the year in October. And go out and see the Milky Way. This is the Milky Way from North Carolina. My friend Ronnie Sherrill up in Statesville took this picture last week. That is light pollution there from Statesville, or maybe he's looking. Yeah, I think that'd be towards Statesville because he's looking to the west. So that could be Hickory, North Carolina, where those lights are coming from. But a time exposure on a tripod. And we'll talk about that with photography of the comet, how to get a good picture. You want a tripod, you want a 30-second exposure, and with a high ISO, and you'll get something like this. Now, this is up at Damascus, Virginia, on top of White Top Mountain, and I'll bet you all the roads to White Top Mountain are closed, washed away, but there's a pretty good shot, and that's Johnson City. No, actually, it'd be the Bristol area right there. Bristol, Tennessee is what we're looking at, lights from that there. But you see the dark clouds of our galaxy's Perseus arm is what we call that there. So, and another Milky Way shot from the Herky-Huffman Park there. That's up the upper left. That green is a firefly that went by during my 30-second exposure. Marty, you got another question on the UCF family microphone.
We got a comment from Tom Celentano. Says, Steve Oakham and I were at the launch for STS-83. Remember the comet being visible.
Oh, good. Yeah. Thank you, Tom. That's probably what that was, STS-83. Comet Hale-Bopp. That was a good one that we saw. One of the best ones that we've seen. It was even visible in the nighttime sky as it trailed across there. So, but here's the way you'll see the Milky Way. That's a big city over my shoulder, the suburbs, rural areas, and then excellent areas. In rural areas, we're talking about the Blue Ridge Parkway, those type of dark areas there. Excellent is, of course, out in the western states. There's even parts of New York that are very prominent in there. So get away from the street lights and the urban sprawl of city lights, and you'll enjoy a better stargazing experience and not experience noctalgia, sky grief that just tears me up from time to time, Marty. Actually, it really does, because where the flooding was in Southwest Virginia was one of my favorite stargazing places, several of them, and within literally under an hour, you could leave your home and have a telescope out and be under really dark skies. And for those of you that don't do it, give it a try. Go to a campground, get away from the lights, get in a dark area. Just lay on that lounge chair with the favorite beverage and maybe some earbuds of your favorite music going on, and just look up and start imagining what in the world's going on. As I've shown you things that you can't see with your human eye, but we can with the telescope, like Saturn's rings. As there's things there, galaxies, nebula, and worlds upon worlds. And now we know that for every star you see, there's probably 3 or 4 or maybe 9 planets orbiting that star. So there are more exoplanets in the universe than there are stars. Think about that. And what are the chances that someone else is doing a Stay Curious episode like Marty and I in the alternate universe somewhere? So, well, you see, I get wrapped up in it because it's Stargazer MarQ taking you to your backyard on a Stay Star Curious Monday. So we're going to have some guests lined up. We've got get our October going off here real well. We're going to talk about the shuttles of October and who's in space tomorrow. I hope you can join with me. Marty, anyone else commenting or questions over there?
Well, Dean Babcock mentions the Grand Canyon offers an outstanding view of the Milky Way.
Oh, Grand Canyon's got to be great, Dean. It's just great. So, well, Marty and I are going to brag here that we're going to go have lunch with lunch. We're going to have dinner with astronaut John Harrington. He's the astronaut out of Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, good friend of our museum and a great guy, the only Native American to go to space. He's a Chickasaw Nation resident. So we'll let you know about John Harrington tomorrow and what he's up to. I particularly want to ask him about what's going on the International Space Station with his friends Sonny and Butch Wilmer up there, way beyond their 8-day stay, staying about 8 months almost. So until next time, folks, I'm Mark Marquette, thanking you for watching and saying we will see you again to bridge the space between us.